Hey, this is Aiden with Workman Firearms. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to do a detailed, complete disassembly of the Glock 19 Gen 4. Now, it's not that difficult. Don't wrap your heads around it. Let's get to it. Okay, so before we get started, some things you're gonna need. A rubber mallet. If you don't have a rubber mallet, not a big deal. Just grab a hammer or a smaller hammer and just duct tape one of those ends just so you don't mar up your firearm when you're using it. An armor's block, and if you don't have an armor's block, not a big deal. You can just grab that roll of duct tape. It works equally as good. A 3 and 32-inch punch rod. I'm gonna be using a Glock tool today. And a little parts container just to keep everything organized and so you don't lose any of these pieces. I'm gonna set this aside. Now, first and foremost, every time we utilize a firearm, we're always gonna clear it. Lock that slide to the rear. Physically and visually inspect that chamber. Inspect your magazine wall. One last time, physically and visually inspect that chamber. All right, the firearm's clear. Pressing that trigger with an overhand grip, pull that slide back 1/8 of an inch. Pull down on your slide lock, push that slide forward. It'll break down into two separate components. Remove that recoil spring assembly, put it in your parts container, remove that barrel. And then I'm gonna set the lower aside. Now the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna disassemble the slide, and then we're gonna work our way to the frame and disassemble the frame. Okay, from here, you're gonna pick up your slide and put your slide muzzle end down on a table or something that's hard. This is just going to help you in the process. Grab your punch and you're going to insert your punch and you're going to put it right before the firing pin lug and the spacer sleeve. Just located it right in here. Put it between the firing pin lug and the spacer sleeve, and you're going to push downwards pressure. Now at the same time, you're going to take your thumb and you're going to put it over the cover plate. As you apply downwards pressure on that spacer sleeve, you're going to also push down on the cover plate, keeping constant tension over it at all times. Keep in mind, if you release it super quick or whatnot, or you don't have constant tension on that back plate, springs can go shoot out. You'll hear a small little click. Keep constant tension over it, and then slide that cover plate off while I'm maintaining my thumb on the back of that slide so nothing shoots out at you. We put that in my parts container. Now from here, I'm just gonna put my slide on its back. Grab your punch. We're just gonna push back on that firing pin lug. Firing pin assembly will come out. I'll put that aside. And then I'm gonna remove the plunger. All you're gonna do is grab on this tiny little plastic piece and pull it out slowly. And set that aside. Now from here, we're going to disassemble the firing pin. Grab your slide and your firing pin. Flip it so the firing pin is facing away from the muzzle end, and drop it down in the firing pin channel so the lug is on the side. Now from here, use your fingers and press down on the spring and push as far as you can get the spring to go. Once you've done that, you can remove your cups. Set those both aside, and then you can pull up on that firing pin spring. Set that aside. Then from there, your firing pin assembly is completely disassembled along with your slide. And now you can do proper maintenance on it. You can clean all these parts that don't get all the love that they should. Or if you're doing a trigger job, you can put in that new drop safety into it, or do whatever scheduled maintenance that you need to do, switch out broken, worn down parts. Now we're going to reassemble that slide. We're going to start with the firing pin assembly. Grab your firing pin and your spacer sleeve. Drop your firing pin back into the spacer sleeve. Grab your slide. Put it back in that reservoir just like we did before. make sure that the firing pin lug is offset. Grab your firing pin spring, drop it back on there. Then make sure that you have your firing pin cups accessible. You're gonna press down on your spring. And as you do that, you're gonna grab your firing pin spring cups and drop them in there. Now once you've done that, check spring tension again. And now we're going to inspect the firing pin spring assembly. So the biggest thing you want to note with your firing pin spring cups is that you don't want any gaps between the cups. So it should look exactly like mine. Set that aside, grab your firing pin safety, drop it right in. Then you're going to grab your extractor. Put your extractor in, and then make sure you keep pressure on your firing pin safety, and then push that extractor in. Release, and make sure that your extractor stays. Now we're going to remove the extractor and the firing pin safety. What you're going to do is you're going to push down on your firing pin safety with your thumb, or you can use the punch rod. Push down on it, and keep in mind, with your firearm, there might be a lot of carbon buildup in there or whatnot. So as you push down on it, you're gonna just have to give this slide a couple hits, and your extractor will come right out. Set that aside. And now it's time to remove your firing pin safety. You're gonna pull up, and the firing pin safety will come out. Now, if the firing pin safety spring falls off from the safety, it's not a big deal. I'll show you exactly how to put that back on. Let's say as I was removing it, that spring fell off. What you're going to do, since it won't stick in there if you just put it in there, and if it does fall out, you have to put it back in proper, or else it will not have proper spring tension on your safety. So in the case that it does fall out, put it back in your firing pin safety, and then with your thumb or your fingers, push down all the way and then rotate it counterclockwise. And it'll lock in there. And then hold it by the spring to make sure that it's actually in there. Set that aside. From here, grab your slide and your cover plate. Insert your cover plate. Make sure it's polymer to polymer. Then you can use your thumb or you can use your punch. To get started, you're gonna press down on your firing pin cover just to get it started, like so. Then you're going to take your punch, put your thumb over the cover plate, press down on the extractor depressor plunger, and push back up on your cover plate. It'll snap right into place. Now from here, we have to do a functions check and make sure that your firing pin safety is working. So what you're going to do is you're going to press down on your firing pin safety, and then you're going to push your firing pin lug forward. From here, you can see that your firing pin is protruding through the breech, which is a good thing. Re-engage that firing pin, make sure the firing pin safety has good tension on it, and then attempt to press the firing pin through the breech. Nothing should happen. One last time, depress that firing pin safety, push your firing through the breech. Attempt it one last time. Okay, so we reassembled the slide. We'll just set that aside, and now we're going to work on the frame. Now we're going to reassemble that slide. We're going to start with the firing pin assembly. Grab your firing pin and your spacer sleeve. Drop your firing pin back in the spacer sleeve. Grab your slide. Put it back in that reservoir just like we did before. Make sure that the firing pin lug is offset. Grab your firing pin spring, drop it back on there. Then make sure that you have your firing pin cups accessible. You're gonna press down on your spring. And as you do that, you're gonna grab firing pin spring cups and drop them in there. Now once you've done that, check spring tension again. And now we're going to inspect the firing pin spring assembly. So the biggest thing you want to note with your firing pin spring cups is that you don't want any gaps between the cups. So it should look exactly like mine. Set that aside. Grab your firing pin safety, drop it right in. Then you're gonna grab your extractor. Put your extractor in, and then make sure you keep pressure on your firing pin safety, and then push that extractor in. Release, and make sure that your extractor stays. From here, grab your extractor depressor plunger. You're gonna put it, reinsert it. Remember, when it comes to your extractor depressor plunger, or when you're working with a Glock in general, it's always metal to metal and polymer to polymer. So make sure the metal end goes in first. Grab your firing pin assembly. And drop it right in. Now we're going to start with the trigger assembly removal. Grab your punch rod and put it right under the ejector. Apply upwards pressure, pull out. Set your frame aside. And now we're going to be working on the trigger assembly. Pick up your trigger assembly, and then now we're going to be removing the trigger bar and the trigger. Pull the trigger bar away from you, just like so. Then rotate it counterclockwise and lift up. Disconnect the trigger bar, set that aside, and now we're going to be removing the connector. Grab your punch rod, then you're going to insert your punch rod on the opposite side of the connector and push through. Connector will come right out. Put that spring aside. So once you remove the trigger assembly, there's only two more things that we need to remove. Your slide lock, and then your magazine catch. So with your slide lock, using your thumb, press down on one portion of that slide lock. Then you can use your punch to slowly push it out. Move it out with your fingers, set that aside. And pull up on that piece of metal that was retaining your slide lock, set that aside. Now from here, pull up on the slide stop lever, set that aside. Grab your armor's block, your duct tape again, and now we're going to remove the trigger mechanism housing pin, which is just that back pin. And if you have a grip module on this, you need to take it off. Punch that pin out, set that aside. Now to remove your magazine catch, you're going to pick up your frame and hold it so you can see your rod spring inside the frame of the firearm. From here, you can either use a punch or you can use a flathead. Flatheads usually tend to work better. You're going to put that flathead in there and you're going to push that rod spring to the right or to the left, depending. Push it to the right, relieving the pressure on it. Now, once you've relieved the pressure on it, you can see that it's standing straight up and down. From here, you can grab some pliers, some needle nose will work the best. Grab the top of that rod spring and then pull up. Rod spring will come right out, set that aside. Then from here, you can just push out your slide catch. All right, now the frame has been completely disassembled. From here, you can do whatever maintenance you need to do on it, replace any worn down, broken parts, or if you're doing a trigger job or replacing parts, you can install those parts at this point. Okay, now let's reassemble the frame. Starting with reassembly, you're gonna grab your slide lock and your slide lock spring. You're gonna drop your slide lock spring into the frame and apply just a slight amount of pressure to make sure it seats. Remember, you do not want to over apply any type of pressure when it comes to that slide lock spring, just because it is very fragile. It's a very thin piece of metal and it can snap on you, and it's gonna be a very hard part to replace. Pick up your slide lock and you want to make sure that the beveled portion is facing the rear of the firearm. Insert just about a quarter way, grab your punch, you're gonna depress slide lock spring, you're gonna move your slide lock right over it. You're gonna press it into place. Now, to make sure that you reinstall the slide lock the correct way, grab your barrel. You're gonna drop your barrel and it should be able to hang from your slide lock. If it doesn't hang and it falls right off, that means you reinstalled it backwards and it's not the correct way and you're gonna have to flip it around. So always just make that test. Grab your barrel, put it on the barrel lug, make sure that locks into that slide lock. All right, we're good from there. Now from here, we're gonna pick up your trigger mechanism and your connector bar. Gently reinstall the connector bar. Remember, you never wanna apply too much pressure, especially with these pieces. So just slide in effortlessly. Now you're gonna grab your magazine catch and your magazine catch spring. Reinsert your magazine catch. Your magazine catch spring, you can use needle nose or you can just drop it in there. Press it down. Push it all the way down into place, and you can use that punch rod to push it down or those needle nose pliers. And then from here, you use your punch rod or that flathead screwdriver, and you're gonna offset it to the right, putting tension back onto the magazine catch. Check for tension. Now from here, you can grab your trigger bar and your trigger bar spring, install that trigger spring. Now you're gonna do the reverse of what you did before. You're gonna pull it forward, rotate it as you pull forward, and drop it right in. Just like so. Now you can pick up your frame and your trigger assembly, line it up, and then just slowly drop it in. Make sure there's no gaps, check alignment. All right, we're good to go there. Now you can get your slide stop lever. Drop it into the side of the trigger. And now from here, we're gonna reinstall the trigger block. Your trigger block is kind of what holds everything in. Go ahead and grab it. Slide it right in and it should go in pretty effortlessly. Now from here, we can reinstall our trigger block pin. Grab your armor's block. Remember, we are installing these now right to left. And now for your trigger pin. So this one is going to be a little bit harder than the trigger block pin. The best thing you want to do is you can move around your slide stop. Make sure that you can see through the frame of the firearm, through the trigger, through the slide stop, and then out to the other end. Going right to left, you can insert it. And then just give it a couple taps on both sides, because it does have those locking mechanisms on each side of that pin. Good, so we know it's properly seated. Now from here, insert that last pin. Grab your slide, drop your barrel in, recoil spring assembly, check alignment, make sure everything's lined up, line up your slide rails with your slide, give it a nice rack. Now we're going to perform a functions check. First thing you want to do is rack that slide once, then you're going to press the trigger. Once you hear the click, while you hold the trigger to the rear, you're going to rack that slide a second time. Slowly release, listening for the reset. All right, we heard the reset. That means this firearm just passed the function check. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and let us know if there's any other videos that you'd like. Thank you.